911, what's your emergency?
I'm freaking out. I can't stop watching these videos. This guy won't let me turn it off.
Sir, what are you talking about?
He's this big bald guy. He's raising his hands up in the shape of horns. What is that about?
Oh boy, we've got a code 666.
What the hell is that?
Mother, man.
All right. What is up, everybody? Good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's funny you caught me off guard. I forgot to stream it to my own audience. I was like, crap, I'm supposed to be streaming to my own audience at this point. I was like, I gotta hit the button.
And I'm using this new laptop, and I'm like looking to see how do I get the comments up. It wasn't playing it, but it was because the intro was playing. So I think that was why. But anyway, yeah.
Good to see you again.
You know, makes you be ready for anything can happen. It's back to my musician days of going on stage and somebody saying there's no power, or the owner says we're not playing tonight, all that kind of fun stuff, so.
When you were performing, by the way, did you get stage fright every time you stepped up, or were you like super comfortable every time you stepped up on stage?
No, I was only what I would call stage fright would have been the first time I played a show with the band Low 12. That was the band I started when I moved out to the Midwest. But the only reason I felt any sort of butterflies was because I had played for years before that, but was that was the first time I was singing and playing bass. And before that, I was just a bass player that did some background vocals, but that was the first time I was singing and writing most of the material. I mean, it was pretty much me. And so everything was riding on me. And if it crashed and burned, then it would have been because of me. So there was some stress there, but man, once we hit that first note and it was just like everything was like in lockstep, then it was like just absolutely crushed it, and then that was never again. And, I was pretty shy in high school, really. I mean, people that know me from high school probably be shocked to hear me doing stuff like this, or watch me doing stuff like this. But what's up, Donna?
I had my 15 minutes of. I had 15 minutes of a lead singer of a band, and then I quit because I had too much stage fright and couldn't do it.
There's a lot of guys that I've ran into over the years, whether they were singers or drummers or whatever, really struggled with it. I had one guy that I'd been in our band that had some problems with it. And so, it can turn into alcohol issues, and that sort of stuff, which is rough, but very good. Voice of Astrology there in the chat. I'm doing good. I'm doing good today. How are you doing? Hope you and Donna are doing well here as we get started on this live. And anytime you're using a new computer, certainly I'm a little nervous now, more than I would be at any Low 12 show. And we played some pretty big shows. We played with Guar, and we played with we opened for Guar at this big former theater, and it was wicked. I mean, that place was full when we went on stage, and it was definitely the biggest crowd we'd ever played in front of. And we played with Cannibal Corpse. Those are the two, probably the bigger bands we play with. A lot of regional bands and up and comings like us, so it was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
But I haven't done that since 2016. The neuropathy in my hands is at the point where I really can't play a bass anymore. It's unfortunate, but I just can't. When
I was in high school, I always wanted to be a rock star, and then I realized two things: one, I couldn't grow my hair out like the rock stars, and two, I had a massive stage fright. So I may have had all the dreams of being a front man, but that did not work out because I was just like, I'm never going to have the look, and I'm certainly not going to have the balls.
Singing is tough. I got somebody doing my yard out here. Yeah, he'll be passing by, but no, I didn't have any of that kind of stuff, but knew plenty of them that did, and it makes for an interesting night when you're really everything's clicking, and especially if you got a good crowd. And we were fortunate to play in front of some big crowds, but we had 6 albums out and a couple DVDs, and we've got a couple movie soundtracks. We're on the movie called Jigsaw, not related to the Jigsaw you're thinking about. This was years before that.
Yeah.
It was called Jigsaw. It was a straight to DVD release, but it was legit. And they played one of our songs, a song called Brutal World. They played it while this guy was getting hacked with a circular saw in half.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty brutal, and it was definitely a brutal world for that guy. So that was cool because it was like a real movie. It was like, wow. And then we were in another movie that was on Netflix where they play us in a chase scene where one group is like the teenagers banging their heads, and the other group are the cops, and the teenagers are listening to Low 12. And so that was kind of cool. So,
Wow.
so yeah, just those are fun moments. But like I said, it's been a while. That's when I started doing Murder Metal Mayhem in 2017, getting that thing cooking, and then actually in 2018 is when we put out our first episode, April of 2018. So yeah, and we're up to 260 something. So anxious to get back to the studio because I didn't want to do the podcast like this too. So, but going out there and looking at the lights and everything, I was out there with the home health worker that helps me, and he was like, "Man, that's really badass. That looks really good. The lights in there really give it that up."
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I'm
Yeah.
stoked. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
stoked for that.
I bet.
But good here. Let's see. Stephanie says she's been looking forward to this.
I saw somebody. It's funny. Like so many times when I go live, there's a new breaking thing. Somebody said in here that there's a ruling on the alternative perpetrators. No continuance is what he said, which that wasn't a surprise. But no alternative perpetrators. And I just looked. I found the court document. I'm literally looking. That's why I look a little distracted because it
Sure.
it indeed got issued today. Stephen Hippler's made a ruling about alternative perpetrators. And just again, I can't read the whole document while we're talking live.
Well, if you want to break into it here at some point when we get into
yeah, for sure. Might want to do that because it's a big
talk Idaho
things that happen when I'm going live is somebody breaks news.
That's cool. Well, hey, you're a lucky guy, I guess. So yeah, everybody here that's been through a live with me and the last few I've done with Lee, we don't put up with any BS. So if you're in the chat and you're just being stupid, we're just putting you in timeout. We've got a couple of mods in there and more to come out as we go. Our lives are just 90 minutes or less. So when we're done, we're done. But if we go the full 90, which we usually do, then we'd be happy to chat and want to just make sure that we're giving you guys what you came here for, and hope you like what we both do. To check out our individual channels as well as these lives we do together. So this is the third one, or the fourth? Is this the third one, right?
Yeah, I think it's the third.
The third one. Okay, so here we go, and we call these. You came up with the name, Lee. What did you?
Devil's Mayhem, right? Although I didn't mean to put myself first billing, but I was just trying to come up with a mashup of us,
Oh no, nothing bad about that. No, Devil's Mayhem's a great name and a great combo of the two. So we've been using that moniker when we do these, and look forward to doing other stuff too. Because I talked with Lucky, and we're going to be doing some stuff with him. I know me, AR, and Lucky are scheduled to do something here pretty quick, and then maybe get into some more panel stuff and get you into that, Lee, and just keep growing the horde. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But
It's slow and steady for my growth. My growth is slow, but we're still growing on my channel a little bit. So.
mine really slowed down too, but at least it's going up, but it's really, really like clawing and grabbing and can't get them,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what happened. If there's a bunch of people in this, you hear about these shadow timeouts or whatever the hell they call them, where your channel's like really dim for a while. It's supposed to be like some sort of punishment. But in that night, you have absolutely no idea what's going on. You're like checking your stuff, like, what am I doing wrong? So
yeah.
it's really insidious. But
Right, yeah. Because I'm just like, what am I missing? What am I? But I
yeah,
got to try
it
to
could
just,
be it because Jules of all trades did an entire episode about it,
yeah.
about how far down hers are. So yeah, it's not just you.
That sucks.
So yeah, I don't know what to make of it, if who's at fault or whatever, but Cheryl's here saying she wants some Devil's Mayhem t-shirts. I'm definitely going to do a T Public page, and we could easily do some of those in there, because the nice thing about T Public is they do the printing and everything. We just license them the logo to use. So we don't get a whole lot out of it at all, but at least the listeners can pick stuff they want. Maybe we come up with a cool logo for that.
Yeah, I
That
think that'd be great. I think that'd be cool if we
t-shirt.
continue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
be something cool for the people that like the two of us working together, and on other projects we both do.
yeah.
So why don't we get it started here, talking about what is mass murder? And a lot of people get confused, when it comes to serial killers and mass murderers, and there is definitely a difference. But how would you define it, Lee, if somebody was to ask you that question?
Well, I mean, I think the big things is because I'm thinking about relating it, of course, to the Idaho 4 thing, which is basically the difference between whether something is a crime of passion and somebody's going after one person, and as I was thinking about it, a crime of passion mass murder typically has a triggering event. Like it may be something that somebody's been thinking about for a while. Like, this person has it coming. One of these days, I'm going to get them. They've been thinking about it. They've been fomenting the idea in their head. And then a triggering event happens, and it may be partially thought out because they've been thinking about it for a while. But then that moment comes, and anyone standing in the way gets it during that event, right? And that feels to me a lot like what happened in Idaho 4, is somebody was a target of the event and others just kind of got in the way. And it was that kind of thing. The serial killer, the traditional thinking, I would say, right, is the serial killer plans out for a while, builds up this need, this urge to kill, does his thing or her thing, and then has a cooling off period until that urge builds again. And it's kind of a cyclical thing that may get shorter and shorter periods in between as they build, the need, if you will. I think those are some of the primary things. And of course, just, then that's different from the homicidal rage, just shooting up a mall kind of thing, which had no direct
the spree killer,
right? Going on a spree until you run out of energy and you're done.
Yeah. We've done, in the podcast side of the house here, we've done all of them, but the mass murder by book definition, 4 or more victims in a single incident. So like you correctly said, Idaho 4, boom, fits that. Serial killing, 3 or more with a cooling off period in between. So you're talking, let's say, like a Gacy, where there were months. I don't know if it went years because he had a whole ton of victims under that house. But anyway, that would be more of obviously a serial killer.
Yeah.
And then the spree killer, I interviewed Catherine Ramsland when she wrote her book on spree killers, which is really good. I have it, and it's interesting because we had just done the one down in Texas, was it, with the two that they wound up modeling that movie after.
Natural Born Killers.
Yeah. Witherspoon I can't remember his name, but yeah, she was Carol Ann Fugate was the girl, and I can't remember the male, but yeah, my necrotizing fasciitis brain doesn't want to cooperate, and that's legit. So there you go. So
And
if everybody's taking a test tomorrow, you
yeah,
could credit Murder Metal Mayhem for schooling you, but your stuff about the passion and all that all fits into this because
yeah,
that's typically like you said, a serial killer. A lot of it is the obsession. Like Bundy with the girls with the long dark hair parted in the middle. Like 90% of them looked like back then.
yeah.
And that was his thing, and then he just went for that, and he was, driven by that, and Gacy with the young boys, that was his thing over in Iowa when he was there. I remember doing some research on Gacy for something or other. I've done so much with him. I guess, he's, I wrote a song about him. That's the theme of the podcast is called Crawl Space, and it's about Gacy. Um, and the opening line says, "Hello, my name is Gacy. Won't you stay? Don't be hasty. I'm the guy who lives next door and buries bodies under my floor." So it's pretty wild. And
Yeah.
it's been the theme of the podcast. And then it's now the little intro here for the videos. But I've just always been fascinated because when he did his crimes in Iowa, if he would have done all his time, the day he would have walked out of prison was the day he got, I think, the day or the day before he got arrested for the crimes up in Des Plaines, up in Chicago. So none
Wow.
of that would have happened if they'd have just made him do his damn time, And
Yeah.
we hear that stuff like, it just drives you nuts, to hear somebody gets out early after doing something awful like that.
Which is it's interesting because it brings up. I feel like, and it's funny because I feel like I should know this topic better than I do, but I feel like with the serial killer, for example, a lot of traditionally timing goes in or planning goes into those things, and they typically find their victims and they isolate them, and they take steps to make sure that they're not seen picking up their victims, and they dump them in places where people can't see where they dump the victims, and there's steps taken to make sure nobody sees, which is why for me Idaho 4 doesn't feel like a serial killer's thing. You don't go into a house with a bunch of cars parked out front with eyewitnesses that are left in the house. That's not how a serial killer operates. So the MO that some people are trying to paint, that Koberger is a budding serial killer and this was his first kill. I don't know at the top of my head if I can think of serial killers that just randomly kill in front of other people in a sloppy man. And in a way it wasn't sloppy because no DNA was extracted out of the house, but it doesn't feel like a lot of serial killers would take steps to make sure that it was planned out. They picked their victim. They picked an opportune time. They certainly didn't pick a party night when everybody's at the house and there's cars all over the scene to do it, which to me, again, screams crime of passion, something that was triggered by an emotion, not something that was planned out.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, there's different types of serial killers, like process killers, like a BTK, where he was very systematic. Everything had to be in a certain order.
Yeah.
A lot of them do that kind of stuff, and then there's others that are very, fly by night. But those ones don't last very long because they get caught.
Right.
You got like Richard Chase, that vampire dude out in California. I mean, that dude was whacked. I mean, he was just running through yards and random houses and attacking people and biting them. I mean, it was out of control, and not in any sort of order. And then there's some that have been just unbelievably cunning, how they are able to keep doing what they do and keep kind of reinventing the wheel, so to speak, and just get out there and change. They, Catherine Ramsland always said, they don't have to always do it the same way every single time. They're learning as they're going.
Right.
They're perfecting it. And then some of them get bored with that. And then like Bundy said, I up and I left my screwdriver or whatever that was that they found. It was something that he left behind, and he says, I was just being lazy. It just wasn't on top of it like I was back when this was more interesting to me. So they seldom don't, it doesn't last long, and that's when they start getting into that berserker mode where they're doing them faster and faster, and then they're just heading for a brick wall there, so.
Yeah. And they certainly tried to paint, Koberger as being a serial killer by indicating that he had killed somebody in Pennsylvania before coming out here, and tried to bring up that he was under investigation in the grand jury in that case. And that was a bit of a reach for sure. I mean, but anyways, yeah, and somebody had pointed out before too. Also, serial killers tend to have histories of other deviants. You know, harming animals is a typical example. They usually start practicing on doing sadistic things to animals first, as a, you know, before you move on to humans, kind of thing. And I don't think you see anything in that history of Kobergers as far as animal abuse and things like that either.
No, not that I know of, but that McDonald's triad, that's what that is: the bedwetting,
Yeah.
the starting fires, and cruelty to animals. Um, that's what he was basically saying. I don't remember the year. That would have been like 50s or 60s, old school stuff. And then later on, like Catherine Ramsland, hate to keep bringing it up, but she specifically will annihilate. If you ever get to interview her, don't ever say that.
About the triad of
nicely correct you and say, you know, there's no such thing as that. You know, it's
outdated thinking.
Yeah, because she says that there's so much. It was done on very loose scientific ground,
right?
But she says that yes, those things can be there, but it's not like the lights
Everyone
out.
has
Like
to have
you're
it, right?
definitely heading for that route that some people might think. But you know, I mean, those types of activities are typical in kids that are very troubled, unsteady at the house, a lot of screaming and yelling, violence. You know, all sorts of weird things, and that's awful to think of kids having to grow up in that kind of environment, but they got to react to it somehow.
Yeah.
I want to throw this up there. Make sure you guys check out Dave's channel, or I'm sorry, Lee's channel. I had my home health care worker here today. His name is Dave. Dave fixed my computer, so Dave is definitely on my mind.
Yay,
But
Dave.
Lee and his Devil's Advocate project, definitely great stuff on there. Really like your videos. Does a really good job. So definitely check him out. And we've been working together now a few weeks, but we'd like to keep doing these for you guys. If you guys want to keep listening to us babble on about true crime, but we definitely love it. I think this kind of stuff just really, just really, really fascinates me in every aspect of it. And every crime, that we dig into, it's like you learn just so much, about it. And the Gacy thing with a lot of the different projects I've been involved with, he's definitely just a favorite subject here. So
and like I said, that's why I went into psychology. I can't help on trying to understand why people do the things that they do. I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes just trying to understand human beings and why they do what they do, kind of thing. And I guess in a way, now I gotta be careful how I say that. In a way, it's like I'm not super judgmental about what people do. I just want to understand how they got there. You know what I mean? Like there's a part of me that detaches from it and like, okay, how did you get to the point to do that? And I could just have a conversation with you like two buds at a coffee table, even if you're describing to me how you just committed a mass murder. Cause I just want to understand how you got there in your head. Like it's just a conversation of a coffee kind of thing, But I'm just fascinated by how people get to the point that they do.
Yeah, definitely. And so good point, Stephanie, about the animals. That's for sure. But so that's, we wanted to just go over the difference between the mass murder and the spree killers and all that. So this way you guys know the terminology a little bit. And it's something we all work towards because it's hard to remember all this stuff. But we're going to talk about some kind of iconic cases, kind of going back some decades. We'll start here in present time with the one and only to so many here on YouTube, but the Idaho 4, and then we're going to move on to backwards in time and going to go to 1970s. Really, really interesting stuff that still rings true today. It's a history repeats itself. That's the the thing you hear all the time, right? It's a common thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And what bothers me, Pete, is I don't know how to handle this because, again, I haven't read this document, but I was looking while we were talking, right, about the new release by Stephen Hippler that just came out. And what's interesting to me is the highlight that I caught, and I don't know if you want to put it on the screen or not, but the point being is that the highlight that I caught was the defense. Ann Taylor submitted 4 individuals in particular for her alternate suspects. So that's new information, the number, 3 of which they said in the document specifically had relations with people in the house and lived within walking distance of the house, one of which had no known relation whatsoever. And essentially what I gathered from the document, again, we could dig into it deeper if you wanted to, was Hippler has ruled it out, saying they provided no evidence. Basically, they had alibis, which is super interesting to me because I've maintained before that I think there's somebody with a way bigger motive that knows the girls and had motive. And basically this document is, nope, they have an alibi. You can't do it. Yet Hippler stated, if they want to do it, defense is allowed to cross-examine the law enforcement officers about their procedures, which again makes me think, this is on the fly, but makes me think that Ann Taylor pointed out somebody that the police has ruled out, and Stephen Hippler is going, they already ruled him out, you can't bring him up. But if you can trip up the law enforcement's under cross-exam to get them to admit that they didn't do something right when they cleared somebody, then you're allowed to proceed with it. But otherwise, you can't bring it up. So I think it's super interesting because it makes me think just what I thought, that the people who are on the alternate suspect list are some of the people I think they're going to be on the alternate suspect list. And Hippler is trying to still say you can't look into it unless you can prove law enforcement tried to hide something or cover something up because they've been cleared.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And I'm sure most people watching this, including myself, would assume that you're probably thinking Jack Couture.
Mish Girl just freaking, oh no, they moved the trial date to the 18th. Oh my God, no. No, I got a room. Now I gotta go. Now I gotta go to the guy and I gotta freaking change my reservation. Son of a bitch.
Man. Sorry to hear about that.
Oh, that makes me nauseous.
Yeah, I saw that. So thanks, Mish Girl, for that. So yeah, that's definitely interesting to hear how they're looking at this. But with the relations with somebody in that house, I mean,
yeah,
Jack, I mean, he would be the likely, and who did, we've heard rumor that, it was Bethany was involved. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Could be anything like that. So
yeah. I think I would be surprised if Jack isn't on that list. Yeah.
That would be wild if that was her exculpatory evidence to Koberger, is to say, that he told her or she saw him or do something when they were together, some sort of reference to it, that would be interesting. But we're all just throwing spitball in here.
And I can't help myself. The 4th individual, by the way, I just looked, I can't help myself. I need to stop. The 4th individual that they said didn't have direct connections had a passing connection. It sounds like it's Kaylee's stalker. There was a point that Kaylee had talked about somebody following her out of a store. And they talk about very specifically, the 4th individual did not know the victims, but had a passing connection to one of them while noticing her shopping at a store approximately 5 weeks before the homicide. He briefly followed her out the exit door while considering approaching her to talk. He turned away, however, but without speaking to her. I think that's the time that Kaylee called the police about her stalker, maybe, because it sounds exactly like the scenario. So that was one of the 4th potential perpetrators that they had on the list. I still think the 3 that Ann Taylor said knew the victims and were within walking distance of the house are the big ones. And it drives me nuts that Stephen Hippler, first of all, as a side tangent, Stephen Hippler, I can't believe is not allowing them to talk about the possibility that somebody else did it, kind of thing, because the whole idea behind reasonable doubt is to say, why this guy and not half a dozen other people who had better motives? And for him to say, nope, you can't bring up that other people had other motives is so clearly biased, in my opinion. It's asinine. So I don't know what the hell this judge is doing, but
yeah, because if you've got 5 or 6 people that legitimately could be, let's just say, and you happen to just pick the one that didn't do it, then that sucks completely, because now he didn't have a chance in hell to get out of that,
Right, especially if you're not going to even allow them to go down that other.
Then all is well that ends well. But now, if you're wrong, I mean, come on now, and putting somebody to death. I mean, this isn't even a. This is
Yeah.
the ultimate price. I mean, man, it's
Yeah.
so messed up. I mean, it really is. And Stephanie bringing up Delphi, yeah. I mean, yeah, that case is
And
unbelievable.
Delphi strikes me as, uh, now granted, I didn't follow the Delphi thing heavily, but Delphi strikes me from the outside as being a crime of opportunity, right? Like, I don't know, was there indication that he stalked those girls, or was it just he happened to be there, he happened to see them, he happened to have a moment of hey, I got nobody's around, I can do something. Like, was there indication that it was planned out, or was it like a crime of opportunity where somebody just allegedly took an opportunity?
I'm not sure because, I mean, if she bought this vehicle and wanted to show it off to her friends, we know she wanted to show it to Maddie, but I'm sure there were other people she wanted to see. So, I
Oh,
mean,
okay. Yeah. I was talking about the Delphi thing, but I see we're on Kaylee coming to the house here.
oh,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I'm sorry. I was
No worries.
looking
We're jumping back and forth between cases.
at trying to multitask here. But
Yeah.
no, you're right about Delphi. Delphi is just it's probably more confusing than Idaho 4, and more people got hurt like permanently in Delphi with that one agent that got gunned down in front of the FBI office. I mean, my God, I mean that's about as hardcore as you're going to get,
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that was going on in Delphi. And then there's that house that burned down in that other town close by. I want to do a video about that. I know nobody will watch it, but I'd like to do it just for myself, if anything. But those girls, those sisters that died in
Trapped
that
inside the
house,
house. Yeah.
yeah, that was really, really bad. So, that, and they tie that in because it was right there by Delphi. And, there was some shadiness there with the arson investigators and the cops. And it's like, where does this stuff just stop? I mean, it's really crazy. So I think, when we talk about mass murder and we talk about Idaho 4, I mean, it's an iconic case. It always will be, no matter how it turns out, because I'm sure there's going to be a couple of like, what, moments in this trial comes out, but it'll be one of those, iconic cases that we talk about, forever, I think, if you follow true crime. But I mean, what do you think about Carl's uh, statement there? He's pretty insightful. I like his comments. He's always here in the chat with us.
Yeah, and if I'm reading it correctly, I think he's indicating, I think that Dylan may have lured Kaylee in for the weekend, and I think that's very true. Again, I think this is, I mean, again, I still go by the notion that I believe Kaylee was the target, and I believe that Kaylee hadn't been staying there for a few weeks, was staying with her family out of the house, and that the fact that the murders happened when they did is because Kaylee came back into town. It's because Kaylee got lured back to the house because somebody wanted Kaylee, and they went after her. That's my gut feeling as well. So I think that's part of the reason, again, why Dylan's story doesn't make a shit ton of sense, because Dylan knows. I mean, we all know. Not we all know. I think Dylan is involved in luring that person back. Whether or not Dylan knew what was going to happen exactly, she was involved in luring that person in. So let's take best case scenario. Dylan lured her back in for somebody and didn't know what was going to happen and went, oh shit, I don't want to have anything to do with this, and I don't want to admit that I lured her in. Or she knew damn well what was going to happen.
Right.
And pictures and sent it around to people that morning on her phone. I'm not sure which one happened. So
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of appellate issues here. I see another commenter, Erica says, but yeah, Carl, good stuff as always, my friend. I agree with you very much in your insight here. But was there anything more you wanted to talk about with the Idaho 4 when we?
well, I mean, other than I think because of the gag order, I think we've talked about this before, but because of the gag order, it bothers me that we're pretending. How do I explain this? That we in the public have to still speculate about what order the victims were killed in. There should be zero speculation. Again,
Right.
cross-contamination of the scenes would tell us everything. If blood from scene 1 in the upstairs room isn't down in the second floor room, then
Right.
the killer didn't start there and chase Xana down the floor as a Dateline says. There would have
Right.
been blood tracked all the way down the stairs. There would have been blood from the first crime scene upstairs in the second crime scene. So we know I should say we don't know because the public has never been told, but somebody knows exactly what order it happened in. The fact that
Right.
that's still been kept under wraps and we don't get to know exactly what order it
That's
happened in
weird.
is weird to me. And again, if
I agree.
what really happens, where the defense is saying it was more than one person and potentially the attack happened on 2 floors simultaneously at the same time, then there may be no cross-contamination between, or virtually none. Like, for example, again, none of the victims from the second floor may be in the third floor and vice versa, but maybe some cross-contamination on the stairway where the 2 killers left the house at the same place. So again, cross-contamination will tell us everything. And the fact that we don't get to know shit about it and have to speculate in the public bothers me, because until trial happens and we find out all about what they do know about the cross-contamination, the story will make perfect sense, I think, once you get to know those details.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that once we absolutely know something, I think it'll can't help but open up some doors that have been just locked shut very tightly and guarded like it's the Jimmy Hoffa's location or something. I mean, I don't understand why a quadruple homicide in Idaho has to be covered up in a way that you would think there's some sort of government ops going on. I mean, I hate to be black helicopter here, but I mean, it lends itself to that kind of stuff when you've got this much strange behavior going on in a case that should be pretty cut and dry. If they claim they've got the goods on them, I don't understand why everything's got to be so hush hush. So something's
Right.
wrong somewhere.
The most mysterious thing is the stuff that they allow to leak to the public and the stuff that they don't allow to leak to the public. So again, it seems like they have no problem leaking stuff to the public to implicate Kohberger, but yet they don't leak everything to the public that can be, and maybe they're accidental leaks. I don't know. I feel like the leaks that have come out have been pretty deliberate, but that's me. But
yeah.
And as far as like the other crime scenes we were talking about, we talked a little bit about, like, for example, the Pike County murders, and what was that, 2016, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right.
But in that case, and it's funny because you and I talked about potentially talking about several cases, but that case, like the Manson murders, for example, happened over the course of it was multiple crime scenes. I think the Pike County ones happened the same night, but in multiple houses. Manson happened in multiple houses over multiple nights. So there's maybe some stuff to talk about in that. I know you talked about maybe talking about a case too that I'm not real familiar with. So any order that you want to talk about these things, I'm game. But
yeah, so I got next up on the list was Manson. The Manson murders. I mean, you don't get much more iconic than that, Lee. I mean, most people, when they think about what got them interested in true crime, if you're 40 or older, you're probably going to say the Manson murders. Just very, very
eerie. And it's funny because I mean, these are questions that people have been asking for forever, right? But about the Manson thing, how do we feel about the idea that Manson wasn't even there to do it, but he gets hung as this mass killer, and he's not the one that actually did murder.
His own cockiness got him thrown there. He was coming out acting like he was the cock of the walk because had these teenagers following his lead. Meanwhile, they were kind of goofing on him behind his back a little bit.
Yeah.
They all wanted to go back to Los Angeles. He didn't. He was trying to figure out a way to get him to stay. So that's where he come up with this insane plan that he said was going to start this race war and all that. And then the kids were, all fired up and that's what he did. And of course, Bugliosi, the attorney, the prosecutor, he was, just letting him take the line. And then he turned it around on him and said, exactly, you were the one that commanded him to do it. He was like a cult leader type situation. I know cults are really big in the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast, but what do you think of Manson as like a cult figure? Would you agree with that?
That's what's funny. I was going to ask you the same thing. I mean, do you feel like the kids really needed somebody to brainwash them into doing it, or did they already want to commit murder? And then just, Charlie gets basically tagged with, well, he was the leader of this group kind of thing. Like, how culpable and how much of a master of the mind was Manson? Because that's kind of the idea that we have about Manson, is somehow he's this master manipulator and basically convinced people to do something that they wouldn't have normally done if he hadn't have been pulling the puppet strings. And I just don't know that I really feel that he was a master manipulator. He may have been the leader of the group, but I don't know about
with
master.
Manson. He had such a horrible upbringing. He was raised in reformatories. He was beaten, assaulted, like brutally. And he's a real small kid, grew up to be a real small man and wiry, so not a very imposing figure in the least. So he had to learn how to survive. And, he did so much prison time and jail time and every other kind of time you can imagine. But he was, just learning the ropes and learning how to survive like a rat in a cage. He's got to figure it out. And he stumbled onto the free love out there in San Francisco, and everything going on with these teenagers. And he was a little older, but he learned how to play guitar.
Yep.
He learned how to play guitar in prison by another. It was actually a gangster. What was his name? Karpus. Alan Karpus, I think his name was. But part of that Ma Baker gang. But he taught him how to play guitar. So Manson was smart. He's like, hey, maybe I could figure out a way through song to, get through to women. He was the master at fitting into the situation. And
I hate to characterize the whole generation, but I think back in that time, people did kind of like just chilling and finding somebody who was kind of a guru who would talk, and they can sit around and do drugs and listen to somebody who could orate well.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of that culture in that day. So
I think
Manson was a product.
That was the mecca of that movement. He was right there, so of course, he was all into that scene, and he was even, buddies supposedly with Anton LaVey.
He was invited I heard he was invited to all kinds of Hollywood parties. People liked him, he was.
Yeah, he was all into that, and he was, wound up running and meeting and living with one of the Beach Boys for a considerable amount of time, the drummer for the Beach Boys, which was just wild, and actually wrote a song with them, and I think it's on one of their albums. He got like partial credit for it, and they wound up not working with him eventually, and it pissed him off. Some people have said that was one of the other reasons he decided to go for that house, was because that music producer was supposed to be there.
And if I remember right, and it's funny that I don't have the details exactly right, but Sharon Tate, who was the pregnant lady that was stabbed, I believe she went to Richland, where I grew up. I grew up in Richland, Washington, and Sharon Tate was from Richland. So I had a kind of an interest in the Manson story, because I heard everybody was like, "Oh, Sharon Tate comes from your town," and I'm like, I don't even know who Sharon Tate is, but. But anyways,
she was a big deal at the time. And then Roman Polanski was her husband, the film director, and he was in Europe filming a movie, so he picked a good time to go film a movie, I guess. But terribly sad with her 8.5 months pregnant. I mean, just absolutely, just savage. I mean, that's just awful. But getting back to your question about, or your comment about were any of them that influenced by him? I think Tex was definitely a killer. I think he was just a bad person, and that kind of stuff just did nothing but make him worse. I think there's all got to be a little bit of that bubbling at the surface, but I think a lot of them were just, teenagers, first time out of the house, didn't have mom and dad's support, and here comes this guy. He's going to feed me. He's going to get me what I want, and all I got to do is do this with them, once a week or whatever the schedule was, and then that's just part of their existence. I mean, it's pathetic, but I think that's what a lot of it is is he was really good on picking out the girl that didn't belong, that
Yeah.
just got to town and needed somebody to take them under their wing and show them the ropes. He was going to give them that. Give them a good meal and a cup of coffee, and then you know.
Right. And from to go into the psychology a little bit, Manson, if Tex, let's say Tex was kind of like already prone to violence or thinking dark or whatever, somebody like a Manson can see that in Tex and then manipulate that person, because he's like,
Oh yeah.
all I got to do is get this guy, because this guy already has an evil streak, a dark streak. If I can convince him to do it, then I could see that as a possibility too.
Yeah, and then there was that Bobby Beausoleil too. He was another one. So, they all played a hand in it. And as we know in the law, I mean, just because you're the getaway driver doesn't mean you're not going to get the same the same sentence as the rest of everybody in the group. You act as a group, you go down as a group.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so the Manson one was definitely one we both decided we wanted to talk about. I just recently did a video. If you're not familiar with it, it's on the channel, um, that I've got, comparing, crime scene comparison. There's a new video series I just started, and I'm going to start looking at different cases and comparing things that are either really different, or compare things that are really the same and maybe we didn't think about it when we talk about this case or that case. So I'm looking forward to doing some of those. The first one I did was the Manson and the Koberger case, and the whole thing of the, um, identifying, the victim as, that there was a targeted attack, right? They told us, you're just going to have to trust us, Lee. This is a targeted attack.
Yeah.
And with Manson, there was no BSing. There was no is it not, like what you were saying earlier about how we're being led around with little crumbs instead of just giving us the damn information. I mean, the taxpayers pay for these investigations. We are taxpayers, whether it be in Idaho or wherever you're at. But I mean, people should be up in arms about this. It's completely outrageous. And then these idiots pull this kind of nonsense and they don't get caught, and that's what's wrong. Is
Yeah.
there ought to be some sort of oversight, because this is happening way too much. I mean, Delphi, Idaho 4, I mean, that's just like one after the other, some sort of Keystone Cop situation that turns bad, or they're just bad in general and they're just doing stuff to, further line their pockets. I don't know. I hate to think that way because I'm not anti-police, but man, I mean, these guys got to do something to clean up their act. I mean, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I'm not anti-police, but I am critical of law enforcement. And one thing that I find is that when law enforcement has decided that somebody's guilty, they tend to get blinders on and they start to make the evidence fit who they believe did it. So it may be a gut hunch or whatever. The problem with that is that when you get blinders on and you're literally going to put somebody to death for a murder, you're going to kill somebody else's son or daughter because your hunch tells you they're the one that did it. And if you start having to lie about, manipulate, or fake the data because you got a gut hunch isn't good enough to put somebody to death in my mind. So I find that all too often, in my opinion, law enforcement, unfortunately, gets involved with making mistakes, maybe even honest blunders, and then taking steps to cover up their blunder so that it doesn't blow their case. And all it does is it leads to distrust in law enforcement. When we see law enforcement covering up things that they botched, then it just leads to us distrusting everything about them. Because again, who are they going to put away for something they didn't do because they failed in their investigation, made a mistake, but then decided to cover up and not come clean and say, hey, we screwed this up. So, I don't want to be overly critical of law enforcement, but yeah, I think it's very, very common for them to try to cover up mistakes when they make mistakes. And I think they make mistakes more than you think.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a brief story I wanted to tell while we're on this subject, because this is a true story. I've never brought this up before on the podcast, but in talking about what you're talking about, I thought it was appropriate. But when I was in Little League, so I'm thinking 13 to like 16 era or age, I had an assistant coach who was a retired NYP detective, NYPD detective. His name was Bob Lucci, and his son Tony was on the team. And Bob got along real well with my dad because my dad was a parole officer and both from the same area. And so they hit it off. But then all of a sudden, like Bob would invite us over for like cookouts and stuff. Why don't you guys come over after the game? And my dad was always like, no, thank you, and just never accepted the offer. And I always would ask him, why do you never want to go over there? It sounds like a good time. They got a pool and all this. And he's like, I'll explain it to you when you're older. And so when I turned 18, he showed me this movie, which was about Bob, because he had said when he was our coach that they were going to make a movie about him or write a book and then a movie about him. And he said that Treat Williams was going to play him in the movie, and this would have been like in the beginning of his career. So he brought him to batting practice and stuff, and we got to meet him and everything. And he was really cool, was playing with us and stuff. And then he hung around with Bob for a couple weeks, and then went back to wherever he was from and worked on the part. And so anyway, but he had me sit down and watch it. And it's about a dirty cops,
Yeah.
in narcotics. And
Yeah.
Bob was involved in it, and he was the one that turned on the rest of them, and the rest of them went down, and he was let to go on and wrote multiple books. Like he had like detective fiction, very
Yeah.
good writer, nice guy. I mean, God, I couldn't believe it. It broke my heart, to find out that he could have done that. But yeah, if you're into those sort of stories,
Yeah,
look
for
for the
sure.
city with Treat Williams in it. It's like early to mid 80s. Well, it would have been about mid 80s because yeah, he told us while it was being ready to be made. So I would say yeah, it's mid to late 80s.
Very cool.
If you're interested, but yeah,
Yeah,
those
the names rang a bell when you said Lucci. I was like, that sounds familiar. So I might have indirectly heard something about that.
well in the movie, it's kind of funny you say the Lucci name, but in the movie he goes by Cello.
Hmm.
That's the name they gave him. But if you buy the book, it says right on the back of the book, Detective Robert Lucci. Um, and so I'm not sure what happened or if they got wires crossed, but his name is out there, and he was writing books under his real name, um, with the detective fiction he was doing. And he came to my high school and did a talk about young writers and people wanting to get into writing and stuff. I talked to him about it for myself, and so yeah, I really liked the guy. I was ashamed to know
Yeah.
that he was involved like that, but he's the bad one in the movie because he turned on all of them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's
yeah, so
interesting
I just
connection
thought I'd
point
throw
there.
that in there, a little
Yeah.
colorful story there. But us Italians, we get we get kind of crazy. But yeah, those Manson murders were just horrific. That first night they were at Sharon's house. I
Hmm.
mean, there was what, 5 victims in that one?
Well, and again, I didn't want to get into it too much, but there was all those rumors in the Idaho 4 that things may have been written on the wall or whatever, and so it made me think
Right,
Manson murders. But the problem is, that's pure speculation. So how I just get a little
right,
itchy. I get a little itchy going in speculation. But again, if we find out in trial that I don't want to get too graphic, but if there was anything written on the walls, it tells you a different type of killer as well than just a random serial killer kind of thing.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree with you there. I think it's just interesting stuff to bring up, but need to be careful. Don't want to get
Right.
too crazy with it. But it makes you think, like all like everything in this case, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking here. The 5 victims that first night, just really, really violent. Like you said, the writing on the walls makes us think of other crimes that's happened, which is
And that design and that murder was designed to look gruesome, right? They took
right,
steps to make it brutal, to
right,
send a shock value, which is different than, say, not to get too far ahead of us, but like the Rodin killings, the Pike County, because they were just people shot in their beds where they lay. Whereas the
right.
Manson thing, that was a mutilation, right? That was a scene that was designed to have shock value.
Without a doubt. I mean, and look at where it happens too, right, Lee? You can't help but think they have that Hollywood on their mind.
Yeah,
they're they're in Hollywood, right, or near Hollywood, so I could
yeah,
see where they would be, all about, just that visual, shocking imagery.
theatrical, yeah,
Yeah, and these people were wealthy people. I mean, Sharon, Jay Sebring, which was her hairdresser, Abigail Folger of the Folger coffee fortune, and then Wojciech Frykowski. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that
yeah.
right. And Stephen Parent, who was like the most unlucky person like on the face of the earth, right? With as serial killings go, he's just walking out to the car, just wrong place, wrong
Be-
time.
Before I forget, I've got to ask you: did you see the movie, the One Night in Hollywood or whatever, the Tarantino movie about the Manson murders?
Uh,
That
I don't
it
know
had
if I
Brad it
have
had
or
Brad
not.
Pitt in it. It had Brad Pitt in it. Anyways,
I don't know. I'm
that
not sure.
that was for I. It's too bad if you didn't see it, because it was kind of surprising. Like, I didn't know where it was going in the movie, and it was kind
That
of a
was
slow
cool.
movie, to be honest. And I tend to like a lot of Tarantino movies, but it was kind of slow going. And then all of a sudden I realized, I was like, oh, holy shit, this is the Manson murders they're going to reenact. But they did it, and for such a macabre scene, they did it in a humorous take, where
Wow.
freaking Brad Pitt is kind of like on acid during the killings, and basically they break in to do this mass murder kind of thing. And you have to see it if you haven't. I don't know if you're a movie fan, but it was
I
freaking
don't watch as
hysterical in a way.
many movies now as I used to. I get really tired of people that want to pontificate about political stuff in
Yeah,
every facet of their lives, and that ilk
yeah, yep,
tends to really do that. So I've just stay away from it. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean that's the Manson murders. I said was definitely a good one that we picked here. Now this next one I wanted to do, Lee, because I thought it would be fun to do something out of the U.S.
yeah.
U.S. is always just takes the. It's like hold our beer, right, when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I got a wild one, and I'll tell you what: if you're a true crime fan and you have not explored Australia, and I sound like a travel guide, right, for Australia, but I'm telling you, there are some wild, I mean, wild characters, funny, cool names. There's some really good ones in Australia, but there's just this. This is not funny, but this is just incredibly violent. But I'm just saying, if you're into true crime, they have the whole gangster period with all the great gangster names and Rent a Killer and all these really cool names. And then, you've got this happens actually in Tasmania, which is just south of the mainland, but part of Australia. It's on the southeast tip there. And this place, Port Arthur, was like the first port that got the settlers to Australia. And then it later became like a prison, and then it later morphed into just the ruins. And somebody thought, why don't we make this a tourist attraction? It's interesting with the story that's happened here. So why don't we do this in a tourist attraction form? So they cleaned it up and they got to put a restaurant in there, and it was from what I read, it sounded like a pretty cool place. Beautiful, coastline and the ocean right there, and a pretty sweet deal. But not a sweet thing in April 28th to 29th of 96. So we're going back to 96 here. Martin Bryant. He was a very disturbed young man, to say the least. Very, very awkward. Some thought, some the autism spectrum disorder going on here. He had a very crazy life. He inherited all this money, and he bought like as many guns as he could possibly buy. And he was like, it was like an armory. And he
Mhm.
winds up meeting, so he's almost out of money. So you think, well, the story should go now. He's out of money, and he's going to give up the guns and go the good way. No, he marries this old woman, and she like that's the whole sugar mama thing. So now he's got this older woman buying him whatever he wants, and he's got like cars and he's got all this stuff. I mean, it's just really a really weird character.
Yeah.
Uh, and kind of weird looking too. Just a very, very interesting character. So he gets, easily caught here because there's video cameras all over this place. But he drives this like I think it was a pink VW Beetle with like his like luggage tied to the top of this thing. So he's like rolling into town looking all ghetto, and he comes in and just starts shooting up the place. I mean, seriously, thousands of rounds, and he's like hunkered down. He moves from place to place within the grounds. He's like there's like a lawn area. He's out there. Then he moves into the restaurant. There's like these harrowing recollections. If you watch any of the documentaries here on YouTube, there's some great ones. The Australians do really good jobs at their documentaries, and they show this whole thing, but they show like people hunched down and really scary stuff, things we see here in the U.S. But all in total, 35, passed, and then like another 20 or 25 injured, and they're just like spread all over the place. And then he ends the thing in a hail of bullets. He hunkers down at like they had a house that was converted to like their office, and that's where there was like a couple that took care of the place. He murders them, and then he hunkers down there, and then they wind up catching him. He comes out alive, and he get 1,000. He got 35 life sentences for each victim, and plus 1,000 years. So
So this was in your definition at the beginning of the night, a murder spree. He went on a spree, huh?
yeah,
And didn't die in the process. He just let himself get caught at the end of it.
well, I mean, it would be interesting to see what Catherine would say about the spree or not, because he moved around, but he was on the same property. Because I
Yeah.
know that was a thing that comes up with the Pike County, which we're going to get to, where he was moving from trailer to trailer. You know what I mean? And moving from site to site. This was more of a same property, but moving from the lawn to inside the restaurant, and then this
In
house
one
was like the
continuous
edge of
event
the
as
ground.
opposed to any breaks in between.
Right. So I
Yeah.
don't know. This could be a coin toss on that. Maybe the audience can give us an idea. Yeah, somebody just posted his IQ was 69, so he was slow,
Oh, yeah.
and he had some problems, like I said, but he was just gone wild. I mean, with the money thing, it was pretty intense. But
What did they
that
say
led
triggered it?
to
Did they say what triggered it?
um. I'm trying to remember if they determined that or not. I'm not really sure, other than that he just had these like really violent fantasies with weapons. He was like really
Yeah.
obsessed with weapons, and he holed up in this prison. I guess his mom was the only one that would ever come visit him, and they did say that this led to some serious firearm reform in Australia, because I had an Australian federal police officer do the episode with us.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how after this Port Arthur happened, like how could this guy with this IQ have an armory at his house? Like an
Yeah.
armory. I'm not even exaggerating. An armory.
Yeah.
And they said, that they just put a halt to it. So you had to have like legitimate proof to need a weapon, and most of that were like 22s for like a farmer to keep vermin down and that kind of stuff, or anybody that has a raccoon problem or something like that. But other than that, you're not just getting a weapon to have a weapon. and then I think they gotta see it every year and inspect it every year. So
And I want to be brief on this, but it's funny because it doesn't really connect, but it just makes me think. I just picked up recently following Rex Heuermann's case, the Gilgo Beach murders, and he had like 273 guns that he collected. He'd been collecting guns since he was a child, and he had a vault that he built in his basement for all of his guns, and had a walk-in vault. And apparently, the next door neighbor said that when he was shown the vault, Rex made a comment to him that you're only one of 4 people in the world who've seen my gun collection. But apparently, he was an avid gun collector. But ironically, none of the victims, if Rex Heuermann is indeed the Gilgo Beach murder, was done with a gun. So it's interesting. But he had a ton of firearms. So I was just going there with the armory because he literally had this walk-in vault that he'd built in his basement of his house for all of his guns.
wow, yeah. So it did lead to some serious reform, and people got to, like an amnesty to get their weapons turned in and stuff. And if you're a gun supporter, that kind of stuff pisses people off. If you're not, some people say they should have gone further. I'm all for, guns. I have no problem. Like I said, grew up with a dad that had them, and I never had a problem with them, and I've always respected it. But, it's got to be done right, and it can't be people getting a hold of these weapons that shouldn't have them, and like Sandy Hook and some of these other ones that just.
Right, and it's funny because I feel like I don't. As much as you and I, are getting to know each other and stuff like that, I don't know how you feel about this, but it's funny because somebody mentioned it in the chat room, and I don't know if it's your chat or mine because we're kind of combining our chats, but it reminds me, there are those who believe that, for lack of a better word, this is going to get a little conspiratorial and I'll back out quickly, which is that some people will actually hire black ops type operations to make a sensational mass shooting in order to confiscate everybody's guns, right? So if you can make a huge thing where you're basically, oh my God, guns are evil, look at what happens when people have access to guns, then in swoops the government with their plan to take everybody's guns. And somebody had commented in the comments here, after this, Australia lost their guns. Now, I don't know the history of Australia, so I don't know what gun laws passed after this event, but it leads me down that whole are we going? Is there anything to the idea that they either purposely planned by somebody in a really dark world, or just seizing the opportunity of a mass shooting to use it to do sweeping gun reform and blame guns for everything because that the moment you got to see, never let a bad event go to waste, right? Never let a bad
politicians say that
go to
all
waste.
the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a messed up idea to think that, somebody would do that, but
yeah,
anything is certainly possible here. I mean, it's a crazy world. It's people get really, really animated when it comes to this kind of thing. And I know you and I just kind of want to stay out of the political realm, but you can't help but dip into it slightly when you get into some of this kind of stuff, because people do, feel the way that they feel about it. And I think a lot of it has to do with your personal connection with it. Like I said, growing up with a dad that hunted, and you had to carry a firearm for work. And so, to me, it was, not a big deal at all to see a gun on his dresser and think nothing of it whatsoever. And if I'd have dared touch it, if I'd have touched it, I'd have got the whooping of my life. So,
right.
I knew that, and he told me
Right.
that. So
Right.
I didn't touch it, so just that simple. But, and then I went into the Army, and then it's like any weapon you could possibly imagine, shot 50 cals and tanks and all sorts of M16 grenade launchers. I mean, all sorts of demolition. Yeah, it was fun if you like that kind of thing. It was doing a lot of that. Wanted to call out a couple of people, some new members here. 25 cats and counting.
That's a lot of cats.
Yeah, that is a lot of cats. Oh my gosh, that's 25 cats and counting. And then our good friend Catherine S, who's just amazing. She's now a YouTube member. I think of the new tier I've got. I added a tier. I got the Horns High Club, and then we've got the Mayhem Squad. And Mayhem Squad's brand new, but if you're interested in joining one of our memberships. We got them right there on the page. So if you're interested, check it out, or in the description, I think there's a link if you want to go subscribe to that or do that. So very cool. Well, what's the next one here on the chopping block here is, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I want to make sure I remember to tell you that. Because Lee, that's how we get these, these things that come to us in the way of, the AdSense dollars that come into the channels is based
Yeah.
on all these, how many likes the video gets and how many people watch it and comment and all that stuff. So all that stuff helps. So if you like a channel and you just flat out don't have the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever dollars to do their membership, don't feel obligated to do it, but you can help by just simply watching their videos, liking them, making sure you're a subscriber, and check the notifications so you get them when the stuff comes out. I've had people tell me they have my notifications checked, but they don't get them.
Yeah.
That's part of that shadow crap too. I don't
Shadow
know.
banning, yeah.
If you're watching this and you have that issue with my stuff, what they claim is if you unsubscribe and resubscribe, that oftentimes fixes that. I hate to tell you to unsubscribe to my channel, but if you're trying to get it recognized, then try that and see if that works. Because that's not good. Because if you're not getting them, now I send mine out as messages too, so that this way, if people are missing them that way, they maybe could see them in my messages. But anyway,
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because all of us content creators, and I'm kind of new to the game, but all of us content creators say that same thing, like, subscribe, notification bell. And it really, really helps a lot. If you do nothing else, it helps a lot because it tells the algorithm that there's interest there, which then puts eyeballs on it. And again, if you monetize your channel to try to get some kind of passive income to come in, it's all a matter of how many people are watching your channel and advertisements that can be put up in front of it, kind of thing. So it all helps. And again, if you want to put no dimes whatsoever, but you just like a creator's content, it means a lot to subscribe and to like the videos, even for free. It's totally free, and right. it helps a lot.
Takes a second. Just takes a second. So there you got Lee's channel there, Devil's Advocates, good stuff. Make sure you do that while you're here today, and good content out there. Just got to know how to look for it. I'll drop this down below if anybody's interested in doing a tip or something like that. You can do that, or you don't have to at all. That's completely fine. But the last one we wanted to do is probably one of the, if not the most disturbing of these, is this one you're going to cover. I mean, this got me.
Which one is this? I forgot what we're doing. Which one are we doing?
County.
Oh, the Pike County. Yeah. I was obsessed with Pike County when it first came out. My wife was big into true crime, and she's like, "You need to watch this. You got to listen." It was on Spotify, I think. You got to listen to this case, right? And I thought, I just not really. I mean, I like true crime, but I'm like, I didn't know anything about the case. But yeah, that was a. What struck me was two entire families, households were wiped out over the course of the same night on a property. And somebody came in the middle of the night, shot them all in their bed. A child was killed, I think, in the event as well. I'm trying to remember all the victims.
The teenager, I think, was killed, but the babies and stuff were okay.
Right. And I think the baby belonged to one of the alleged killers. It seemed. Yeah,
that was the fight. The feud over the child. The Hatfields and the McCoys, right?
It's exactly how it felt. It was a family feud that just went tits up.
Appalachian, I mean, like hardcore, okay?
Yeah.
Not to discredit it. I'm just saying, I mean, they're hardcore and they don't fool around.
Right.
But apparently they fooled around enough where these two teenagers wound up coupling and getting pregnant, and then the baby's born, and the mom of the dad wanted the baby, and the mother was like, "Well, wait a minute, it's our baby too." And they just fought.
And then the matriarch of the family, the woman's like, "You're not going to take my grandbabies. To hell with you! I'll kill your whole family." Like it just got like it's just like Hatfields and the McCoys. They just literally like, you aren't taking my grandbabies. I'll kill you.
Exactly. These women don't fool around. They don't fool around.
Right.
That's like the gangster in Australia, Tilly Devine. They called her Razor because when the Razor Wars were going on in Australia was when they completely shut down weapons in like the 20s.
Yeah.
So they've had a history of that. It came back, but they shut them completely down and then made the fine so bad that it was like a year's salary for most people. So then they were using straight razors. They call them cutthroat razors over there, but they're out there straight razor fighting in the streets. And there was a woman, Tilly Devine, who was she was hacking and slashing with the rest of them. So just downright brutal. So yeah, these are some rough and tumble types.
And I have to be careful because I have a little bit of a conspiratorial nature in me. And again, I always look for stories that have some kind of political or law enforcement cover-up thing. And even in the Pike case, even the Pike County case, there was indications about law officers that were involved with the family that covered things up and hid things. There was a drug angle. There was things that they were allegedly doing on the property that they didn't want known that they were doing on the property. I mean, the whole thing was a gigantic shit show of conspiracy theories and wild things. And I think today, we still haven't the main guy, Wagner, the father of the family, I think he still is facing trial, isn't he?
He's the last one that's got to go through it. The rest of them, the mom and the youngest son turned on the other son and the dad.
Yeah.
They testified, and it's like, what's messed up is that kid that testified, he was the one that actually did the deeds. The other brother was just there.
Yeah, I was trying to remember because it's been so long. How many? It seemed like there was more than one shooter, but one guy primarily did most of the shootings. It's been a while since I remember.
Yeah, the dad and the one son, they did most of it. The other son, I think he drove or he was just not very hands on, and so he but he got roped into the whole thing, and then his brother turns on him, which is so bogus when you're the one that should be going in there,
Right.
So it was really bad. He got time, but he didn't get nearly the time that the older brother did. But yeah, the dad's the last one. There's been just delay after delay. I mean, it just is dragged on. He's of course in some county lockup somewhere, but in Pike County, I guess. But
and again, that was I'm trying to remember what triggered that evening. I mean, again, it's not a serial killer situation, right?
It was the kid fighting over the kid. So I guess it would be considered a crime of passion, I would think. I mean,
it was something that was fomenting, right? There was an ongoing feud about the kid. And I try to remember why they picked that night. Was it just an opportunity that night? And they'd been planning it for some time. I know that
I believe so because the mom, she bought like different sneakers for the kids. So in different sizes that they typically wore, so it would throw off the cops.
Yes.
I mean, she had receipts, like really dumb, like buying it at Walmart, with the receipt on the counter when they came and rushed the house, so really, really dumb. But they moved to Alaska and then they came back.
Right.
I was in Alaska for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And then they came back. It's like they got away with it, and they came back. And
one of the girls was in a church and she came back and it's all coming back to me. You're all, I remember fleeing to Alaska.
They put the body in the cement as a way to weigh down something with their boat ramp or something.
Wasn't there a gun in a well?
It was like just this wacky.
Gosh, it's been so long on that.
It's a good one. Murder Metal Mayhem. Check it out. You can search for that. The language is a little tough, but if you're going there to listen to some Pike County business, then the language should be the last thing you're worrying about. Because we do it right over there at the podcast. It's wild if you're not familiar with it, but it's not for everybody. So don't go there crying and coming back to me that you're upset that I told you to go there, because it's rough. But if you like dark humor and stuff I'm laughing about, then you would definitely dig it. So Very cool. Well, we got any comments here? Let's see. Had a good live, a smaller crowd than last time, but honestly, I wasn't pulling any punches with what we were going to cover.
Yeah.
I didn't want to clickbait people to think we were doing an all Idaho 4 because we knew we
Yeah.
weren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
I'm
no.
glad that you guys that did come, hopefully enjoyed hearing something other than that case. We are desperately, the creators are all desperately trying to talk about something else. So if you're listening or watching, put a comment down of an idea, or go to the message, the community tab, and leave a post there or something to let us know what you guys want, because that's the only way we're going to get to try different things. I'm tired of talking about the same people all the time. So, but I mean, I like doing it. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to do a change of pace with some other cases. And, Manson and the Pike County, and then that Port Arthur. Like I said, I hope to turn on some people to some Australian true crime. You'll definitely enjoy the trip, especially if you like gangsters. They got some really good gangsters, typical to our Babyface and all those funny names and all that. So, but anything coming up on your channel, Lee? You wanted to talk about Devil's Advocates? Anybody want to, or you want to
um,
let
I
somebody
mean,
know what you're doing?
yeah, I mean, if anybody in your audience, and I don't think your audience is this way, but I'll just mention it. I do cover 3 cases primarily because of the same reason you said, which is try to diversify a little bit so it's not all the same case. So I cover Luigi Mangione, and if you didn't catch it, we did talk about Brian Koberger and Luigi, but on Wednesday night, so that's last night. Was that last night? The days are running together. I
Last
had a
week,
I had a criminal defense attorney, Ali Benevento, 15-year criminal defense attorney on, and we talked about the death penalty. We had a special called Death is Different. We talked about the death penalty, and we talked specifically about how it relates to Luigi Mangione and Brian Koberger's case that are seeking the death penalty in those cases. So if you missed that, it's on replay, and, you might learn some stuff about the legal process. She actually, my friend Ali Benevento, is facing her first death penalty case where she's defending somebody in a death penalty case. She's been a criminal defense attorney for 15 years, but she's her first death penalty case. So she has some passion about the death penalty. She doesn't believe in the death penalty. It doesn't believe we shouldn't lower ourselves to the standard of putting somebody to death. But she's very passionate. We did talk a lot about voir dire process, how it's different to seat a death penalty qualified jury versus a regular jury. A lot of stuff. That's one of the things I like to focus on, is teaching people what the court system's like and breaking down the legal documents. So that happened. If you want to watch that on a replay, tomorrow night I've got a live at 6 p.m. and then afterwards I have what's called the After Dark Party, which, by the way, someday if you can drag yourself to a late night show at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so it's a little late for you, I do a Discord channel where we literally have drinks. We get a little intoxicated. We get a little irreverent, as if we could get more irreverent than we do here. And we talk about everything, P. Diddy and all kinds of other cases. It's a freak show, not a freak off, but a freak show, and where we have a few drinks. So I invite you to take part of that. And we've got Bertie Bombshells, one of the content creators. He's coming in tomorrow night to have some drinks and hang out after dark. So I hope you can make it.
On my list to do tomorrow is to sign up for Get My.
Oh my gosh, I would love to have you backstage and get a little bit more blunt, as if we're pretty blunt as it is, but maybe more so on the After Dark show.
Right. But it's just so good to see, like the familiar faces here. I'm not sure about next week because I know we got the 4th of July coming in there and people have a lot of plans. So we'll probably, I think, Lee, for next week, probably skip our Thursday night thing just because of, I think the 4th is on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. So
yeah,
if I'm off on that, let me know. But I always hate to try to compete with a big holiday, especially an outdoor holiday like that where people are outdoors and not sitting here watching videos with us crazy people. So, but I've got some good stuff coming up on the channel, working on some new ideas. I haven't forgotten about my West Memphis 3 idea. I want to redo, or I want to do a video, long form video on the West Memphis 3. I think it's an iconic case of, you want to talk about the cops gone wrong. That's the poster boy for that. and I think it still resonates today. So I've reached out to try to get a hold of one of the guys to see if they would come on with me, but I haven't had any luck yet. But I'm not giving up just yet. But that would be really cool to get one of them, or all of them would be really, really cool. But I doubt that would happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't have a big enough channel to kind of get that sort of clout with anybody. But
I'm working
Catherine
on trying to get
Randall is
people
my
to come on
claim
here.
to fame. So
That's a big one. That's a big one. No,
and
I
Peter
know.
Vronsky and Harold Schechter, who's written a ton of serial killer books,
Yeah.
true crime. Harold Schechter, which was interesting. So.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. Well, good rest of your week, and we appreciate it very much. If you're on the replay crew, don't forget to like and subscribe and drop a comment. So thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thank you again, Pete. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.
Have a good evening.